The envelope arrived on the morning of what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. No return address, just my name scrawled across the front in an unfamiliar hand. Inside was a USB drive and a note that simply read, "Watch before you say I do." I almost threw it away. "Anonymous packages on your wedding day," screamed jealous ex or bitter friend. But curiosity got the better of me. With 3 hours until I needed to be at the church, I plugged the drive into my laptop. The video began with a hotel room, the executive suite at the Ritz where Connor had supposedly spent last weekend at his bachelor party. I recognized it immediately because I'd helped book it. The timestamp in the corner showed 2:14 a.m., 2 days ago. Then Connor walked into frame, loosening his tie. He wasn't alone. My sister Emma followed him, her dark hair falling loose around her shoulders as she kicked off her heels. They were laughing about something, their movements intimate and familiar, when he pulled her against him and kissed her, not a friendly peck but deep and hungry. My stomach dropped. And when his hand slid up her dress, I slammed the laptop shut. My heart hammered in my chest as I sat there, trying to breathe through the sickening shock. This had to be fake. Connor wouldn't do this. Emma wouldn't do this. Not to me, not with each other. With trembling fingers, I opened the laptop again and forced myself to watch the rest. It wasn't fake. It wasn't a one-time mistake. The familiarity between them was unmistakable, the way Emma knew exactly how to touch him, the way he whispered things in her ear that made her laugh. They'd done this before. "Beth doesn't suspect a thing," Connor said at one point, his words slightly slurred but clear enough. "After the wedding, it'll be easier. You sure you want to go through with it?" Emma asked, and I barely recognized my sister's voice, husky and confident in a way she never was around me. Connor pulled her closer. "Have to. My parents would disown me if I backed out now. Besides, your sister's got her uses. She's just not you." I sat frozen, watching as they, my fiancé and my only sister, betrayed me in the most intimate way possible. When the video ended, I reached for my phone, then stopped. What would I even say to either of them? They were probably together right now, laughing, getting ready, playing their parts. Emma was my maid of honor. She'd spent the night at our parents' house, claiming she wanted to help Mom with the morning preparations while I enjoyed my last night of freedom in the apartment Connor and I had bought together. Freedom. What a joke. I poured myself a glass of the champagne that had been chilling for the bridesmaid's toast and downed it in one go, my mind racing. All the little moments suddenly snapped into focus. Emma's strange tension whenever Connor was around, the way they both checked their phones whenever I left the room, Connor's increasing late nights at work over the past 6 months. The landline rang, making me jump. My mother calling to make sure I was getting ready. "Everything okay, honey? You sound strange." "Fine, Mom," I managed. "Just wedding jitters." "Well, the cars will be there in 2 hours. Emma's helping me with the flowers. She says she'll meet you at the church to help with your dress." "I bet she will," I thought bitterly. "Great," I said aloud. "I'm just about to start getting ready." After hanging up, I sat motionless, staring at the wedding dress hanging on my closet door, the full-skirted ivory satin gown I'd fallen in love with at first sight. Connor had said I'd look like a princess. For one wild moment, I considered calling everything off. But then what? Humiliate myself in front of 200 guests. Give Connor and Emma the satisfaction of knowing they'd broken me. No, they wanted to play me for a fool. They hadn't counted on me finding out. And now that I had, I'd be damned if I let them get away with it. I picked up my phone and made a call. "Ava, I need your help, and bring that camera you use for work." The church looked like something from a fairy tale. White roses and lilies adorned every pew, soft light streamed through stained glass windows, and the string quartet played gentle melodies as guests filed in. My father waited in the small anteroom, beaming with pride. He looked so handsome in his tuxedo, so genuinely happy. "You're a vision," he said, eyes welling up. "Connor's a lucky man." "You have no idea how lucky he is," I thought grimly, "that he's marrying your daughter at all after what he's done." Outside, I could hear the growing murmur of arriving guests. My college roommates, Connor's business associates, distant cousins, and family friends, all here to witness our union, all here to see what would happen next. Beth. Emma swept into the room in her maid of honor dress, the dusty rose color complementing her fair skin perfectly. "Oh my God, you look amazing." She hugged me, and I forced myself to hug her back, to smile as if everything was normal. "Thanks, Em, you look beautiful too." She fussed with my veil, chattering excitedly about the decorations and how nervous Connor looked. I noticed she wouldn't quite meet my eyes. "Is everything set up for the reception?" I asked casually. "Everything's perfect," she assured me. The slideshow is all ready to go, just like you wanted. Not quite like I wanted, but she'd find that out soon enough. The wedding coordinator popped her head in. 5 minutes, everyone. Emma gave my hand a squeeze. I'm so happy for you, sis, she said, and the genuine warmth in her voice made me want to scream. How could she stand there, look me in the eye, and pretend? But I just smiled back, serene and secretive. I'm happy too, Em. Everything's going exactly as planned. Connor stood at the altar, looking so handsome it hurt. Dark hair perfectly styled, blue eyes bright with emotion as the music changed and the doors opened. Our guests rose to their feet, all eyes on me as my father and I began our walk down the aisle. One step after another. The faces blurred as I passed, Connor's mother dabbing at her eyes, my college friends beaming, work colleagues nodding approvingly. Emma stood at the front, a picture-perfect maid of honor in her flowing gown, her smile radiant. When we reached the altar, my father kissed my cheek and placed my hand in Connor's. His fingers felt warm around mine, steady and sure, as if he weren't living a complete lie. You look incredible, he whispered, and for a second I almost faltered. The man I'd fallen in love with, the future I'd planned, it had all been real to me, just not to him. Dearly beloved, the minister began, his voice resonating through the church. We are gathered here today to witness the union of Connor James Hayes and Elizabeth Ann Collins in holy matrimony. The ceremony continued around me as I stood there, going through the motions. I heard Connor's vows as if from a distance, promises of fidelity, respect, and love until death do us part. When it was my turn, I spoke clearly, making my own promises, though not the ones everyone thought they were hearing. I, Elizabeth, take you, Connor, to be my husband. My voice didn't waver. I'd always been good at keeping secrets when it really mattered. The exchange of rings, the prayers, the blessing, it all passed in a blur. And then the minister was saying, "What God has joined together, let no one put asunder. I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Connor lifted my veil, his eyes filled with what looked remarkably like love, and kissed me. The crowd erupted in applause. We were married. The first part of my plan was complete. The reception was held in the grand ballroom of the Carlton Hotel. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables adorned with white roses and flickering candles. A jazz band played softly in the corner as guests mingled during cocktail hour. I moved through the crowd on Connor's arm, the perfect newlywed couple. I laughed at the right moments, thanked everyone for coming, accepted congratulations with gracious smiles. If anyone noticed the steel behind my eyes, they didn't mention it. Emma flitted around us, taking photos, directing the catering staff, playing her role as the devoted sister and maid of honor. Twice I caught her exchanging glances with Connor when she thought I wasn't looking, subtle, secretive looks that sent silent messages between them. My mother pulled me aside as I was heading to the bathroom. "Beth, is something wrong? You seem distant." For a moment I considered telling her everything, but what good would it do now? The damage was done. Better to stick to the plan. "Just trying to take it all in, Mom," I said, squeezing her hand. "It's overwhelming." She kissed my forehead. "I'm so proud of you. You and Connor are perfect together." If only she knew. Dinner was served, toasts were made. Connor's best man told embarrassing stories from college. My father wiped away tears as he welcomed Connor to the family. And Emma, dear, sweet Emma, gave a heartfelt speech about how she'd never seen her sister so happy, how Connor was the brother she'd always wanted. "To Beth and Connor," she said, raising her glass, "may your marriage be built on trust, honesty, and a love that never fades." The irony nearly made me laugh out loud. As dessert was being served, the wedding coordinator dimmed the lights. "And now," she announced, "a special presentation from the bride to her new husband." Connor looked at me in surprise. "I thought we agreed no gifts." I took his hand, smiling sweetly. "This is something I've been working on for months. I wanted it to be a surprise." A large screen descended at the front of the ballroom. The room quieted as the projector flickered to life. The video began with a montage of our relationship. Connor and me at college graduation, our first apartment, vacations together, family holidays. All set to our song, the one he'd first kissed me to. "This is beautiful," Connor whispered, squeezing my hand. "Just wait," I replied. "The best part is coming." The montage shifted to interviews I'd recorded with friends and family, sweet messages wishing us well, sharing memories, offering advice for a happy marriage. Then the screen went black. For a moment there was confused silence. Then new footage appeared, the hotel room at the Ritz. Connor and Emma 2 days ago. A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom. I felt Connor go rigid beside me, his hand suddenly cold and clammy in mine. At the head table, Emma froze, her champagne glass halfway to her lips. Beth, what the fuck? Connor hissed, trying to stand, but I held his wrist in a death grip. Sit down, I said pleasantly. Everyone's watching. And they were. 200 pairs of eyes fixed on the screen where Connor, the man who had just promised to forsake all others, was unbuttoning my sister's dress. Emma bolted from the table, but my friend Ava was there to block her path, smartphone recording her panic. Going somewhere, Emma? I'd muted the video's audio, sparing our guests the explicit details of their conversation, but the visuals were damning enough. Connor's parents looked like they'd been struck. My mother's hand was pressed to her mouth in horror. My father's face had turned a dangerous shade of purple. The video ended with a final message typed across the screen. Thank you all for coming to celebrate the truth. The marriage has been annulled. There will be no honeymoon. The lights came up. I stood, smoothing my wedding dress. I'd like to thank you all for witnessing this special day, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. As you can see, my husband, my ex-husband, and my sister have been having an affair. I only discovered this morning, but rather than canceling the wedding, I thought it would be more fitting to expose their betrayal in front of everyone they know. The silence was absolute, the shock palpable. The annulment papers have already been filed. I signed them this morning before the ceremony. Connor, I turned to him, his face ashen with shock. Your signature from our marriage license application was sufficient for the filing. You're not legally my husband, you never were. Beth, please, he began, his voice breaking. It was a mistake. A mistake you've been making for 6 months, according to your text messages. Which, by the way, I've forwarded to your boss. I turned back to our guests. For those who don't know, Connor works for my father's investment firm. Worked, I should say. My father stood now, his expression thunderous. My office, Monday morning, Hayes, you're done. I stepped away from the table, pausing beside Emma, who had sunk back into her chair, tears streaming down her face. I trusted you, I said quietly, with everything. She couldn't even look at me. Beth, I'm so sorry, save it. I straightened my shoulders and addressed the room one final time. The bar will remain open for another hour. Please enjoy the rest of your evening. The cake was expensive. And with that, I walked out head high, the train of my wedding dress sweeping behind me like a queen's robe. Outside the ballroom, in the quiet of the hotel corridor, I finally let myself breathe. My hands shook as I fumbled with my clutch, looking for the key card to the suite I'd booked. Not the honeymoon suite Connor and I were supposed to share, but a small room on a different floor. Beth, I turned to find Ava behind me, her face full of fierce pride. That was the most badass thing I've ever seen. I couldn't have done it without you, I said, suddenly exhausted. Did you get Emma's reaction? All of it. She held up her phone. I got her trying to run, Connor looking like he was about to vomit, and your dad looking ready to commit murder. It's all here, I nodded, leaning against the wall. Good, send it to me later. What now? She asked softly. What now, indeed? I'd been so focused on executing my plan that I hadn't really thought about what came after. The adrenaline was wearing off and reality was settling in cold and harsh. Now I go home, I said. Well, not home. Connor's name is on the lease for our apartment. I'll stay with my parents for a while, I guess. Start over. Ava squeezed my arm. Stay with me, as long as you need. The elevator doors opened and my mother stepped out, her face drawn with concern and lingering shock. When she saw me, she rushed forward. Elizabeth Ann Collins, what in God's name just happened in there? The shock in her voice was giving way to anger. You humiliated our entire family in front of everyone we know. I humiliated the family, I repeated incredulously. Did you miss the part where my sister was sleeping with my fiancé? Of course not. She lowered her voice, glancing around as if worried someone might overhear. What Emma and Connor did was inexcusable, but this public spectacle, couldn't you have handled it privately? I stared at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. They betrayed me, Mom. They lied to my face for months. They were going to keep lying, keep sneaking around behind my back after I was married. They deserved exactly what they got. And what about the rest of us? She demanded. Your father's business associates were in that room, my friends from the club. What will people say? I laughed, a short, bitter sound. That's what you're worried about, your reputation? Beth, she sighed, I understand you're hurt. No, I cut her off. You don't understand anything. If you're so concerned about your reputation, maybe you should talk to your other daughter, the one who sleeps with her sister's fiancé. I turned back to Ava. Let's go. As we waited for the elevator, my mother called after me, her voice softer now. Beth, please, come home. We'll sort this out as a family. I didn't turn around. I don't have a family anymore. 3 days later, I was sitting in Ava's apartment, surrounded by takeout containers and half-empty wine bottles, scrolling through the barrage of messages on my phone. Some were supportive, friends expressing outrage on my behalf, distant relatives I barely knew offering words of comfort. Others were not: Connor's desperate pleas for forgiveness, Emma's tearful voicemails, my mother's increasingly frustrated attempts to get me to be reasonable. I deleted them all. The video from the reception had gone viral, of course. Someone had recorded it on their phone, and now millions of strangers were watching my life implode. I'd turned down 3 morning shows and an exclusive with a tabloid magazine. The story was everywhere: bride's epic revenge on cheating groom and maid-of-honor sister. I was a meme now. Wedding revenge was trending. "You might as well profit from this," Ava said, dropping onto the couch beside me. "That magazine was offering serious money." I shook my head. "I don't want to be known for this, I just want to disappear for a while." My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "You don't know me, but I was at your wedding. I'm the one who sent you the USB drive. I thought you should know I worked for the Ritz as night security. I saw them together multiple times over the past 6 months. I'm sorry." I stared at the message, a fresh wave of hurt washing over me. 6 months, half our engagement. "Who's that?" Ava asked, peering over my shoulder. "My anonymous source," I replied, setting the phone down without responding. Turns out Connor and Emma were regulars at the Ritz. "Bastards," Ava muttered. There was a knock at the door. Ava went to answer it, then returned with a grim expression. "It's your dad." My father stood awkwardly in the doorway, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Gone was the confident businessman, replaced by a tired, uncertain man. "Can we talk?" he asked. I gestured to the armchair across from me, and he sat, adjusting his suit jacket nervously. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "How do you think?" He nodded, accepting the sharpness in my tone. "I fired Connor yesterday, revoked his company shares too." "Good. Your mother is," he hesitated. "She's not handling this well." "And I am," I shot back. "That's not what I meant." He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Beth, what you did was unconventional, but I understand why you did it. If it had been your mother, if I'd found out on our wedding day..." He let the thought hang there. "What about Emma?" I asked, the name tasting bitter on my tongue. My father's face darkened. "She's staying with your aunt in Philadelphia. Your mother and I have made it clear she's not welcome at home right now." He paused. "She betrayed you in the worst possible way. I won't pretend to understand how or why she could do such a thing to her own sister." "She wanted what was mine," I said simply. "She always has." From childhood toys to college scholarships to boyfriends, Emma had always coveted what I had. I just never thought she'd go this far. "I came to tell you that the apartment is yours," my father continued. "I bought out Connor's share. It's in your name now, free and clear." I stared at him in surprise. The apartment was worth at least $500,000. "Dad, I can't accept, please," he interrupted. "Let me do this for you. I couldn't protect you from them, but I can at least make sure you have a home." Tears pricked at my eyes for the first time since the wedding. "Thank you." He stood to leave, then paused. "Your mother does love you, Beth. She's just traditional. She doesn't know how to handle things that fall outside her idea of proper behavior." "I know," I said, "but I can't face her right now, or Emma. I need time." "Take all the time you need." He bent to kiss the top of my head just as he had when I was little. "I'm proud of you, you know. It took courage to do what you did." After he left, I sat staring at the wall, feeling the first faint stirrings of something like peace. Not happiness, not yet, but the beginning of healing. 1 month later, I stood in my apartment now, redecorated and rearranged to erase any trace of Connor. Gone was the leather couch he'd insisted on, replaced with a soft sectional in a warm golden hue. Gone were the sports memorabilia and the pretentious art he'd chosen to impress his clients. Instead, the walls held photos of places I wanted to visit, books I loved, and a single framed picture of me in my wedding dress, not from the ceremony but from before, when I was still innocent and hopeful. I kept it as a reminder. Never again would I ignore my instincts. Never again would I let love blind me to betrayal. My phone chimed with a text from Ava, "Dinner tonight." The new Thai place opened. I typed back a quick affirmative, then set the phone down and moved to the window. The city sprawled below, the afternoon sun turning the skyscrapers into pillars of gold. Somewhere out there, Connor and Emma were living with the consequences of their choices. I'd heard through mutual friends that he'd lost not only his job but several key connections in the industry. My father's influence was far-reaching. As for Emma, she deleted all her social media accounts and, according to my aunt, was considering moving across the country. I didn't wish them well, but I no longer wished them harm either. They had taken something precious from me, my trust, my innocence, my faith in love, but they hadn't taken my dignity or my future. Those remained firmly in my hands. My phone rang. My mother again. After a moment's hesitation, I answered. "Hello, Mom. Elizabeth." Her voice was stiff, formal. "How are you?" "I'm okay," I said, surprised to find it wasn't entirely a lie. "How are you?" Coping. A pause. "Your father says the apartment looks lovely." "It does." I waited, sensing there was more. "I've been thinking about what you said," she continued, her voice softer now, "about family loyalty, and you're right. What Emma did was unforgivable. I should have supported you unconditionally." It wasn't quite an apology, but from my mother it was close. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. "Would you?" She hesitated. "Would you consider coming to dinner on Sunday? Just you and me and your father, we could talk, try to move forward." I thought about it. The hurt was still there, the broken trust, the knowledge that my family would never be the same again, but perhaps something new could grow from the ashes. "I'd like that," I said finally. After hanging up, I returned to the window, watching as the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon. The wedding video had faded from social media, replaced by newer scandals, fresher outrage. My 15 minutes of viral fame had passed, leaving me with the quiet aftermath, a life to rebuild, wounds to heal, a future to design on my own terms. The USB drive that had started it all sat in my desk drawer. I'd considered destroying it, but decided against it. Some truths shouldn't be forgotten, no matter how painful. My wedding day had not been the beginning of a fairy tale, but it had been the beginning of something, a harder, more honest kind of story. One where I learned that sometimes the most valuable gift is the truth, no matter how it's delivered. And one day, perhaps, I might even be grateful for it.